the co-host real quick?
Yes, I can. I will do that. So welcome everyone as I'm getting Jeff and Cathy are with us today. I'm assigning Jeff as a co-host so that if he has anything he wants to share, he can, and also recording our conversation, both of us. So
Okay. Looks like it is recording, so thank you.
Yeah. So everyone who's on this call, how do you feel about us streaming this to our Thriving Singles community? Do you want to keep this? Do you want to just keep this private among us? Would you feel more comfortable if it's just us? Or would you be okay about it streaming to Thriving Singles community? I didn't plan on that. I had the thought just hit my head. So if you're not okay, I won't do it.
I'm okay.
You guys okay with that?
It has to be anonymous for the whole group, right?
Would you be comfortable share? It has to go with everyone. If anyone at all feels uncomfortable, because I want people to feel comfortable to share and to ask the Teicherts questions. So are you Teicherts? Are you good with that as well?
Oh yeah. Whatever you guys want to do on that.
Yes. Okay. I will do that, and then let me get Michael's permission before I start. Hey, Michael, welcome. Oh, can you hear me, Michael? Oh, nope, you can't.
I can now. Sorry, I misplaced my earbuds.
That's okay. So I just was asking everyone permission. This was just a side note, a kind of a last minute thought of streaming this to Thriving Singles community. Are you okay with us streaming it? Would you feel comfortable sharing everything? Feel like sharing? Okay. All right, I'll do it.
Did Gloria say yes?
Gloria, are you comfortable with us sharing this? Or is there anything you want to say that you want to keep private with us? Are you good with that?
Okay.
So we recorded and live streamed, Gloria. Are you okay?
Good morning, Gloria.
Yeah, good evening. No, I understand. It's
okay.
I like it that it's more private, but if it's okay, what can I say?
Yeah. Well, we can keep it private. You know what? I'm just going to keep it private. And then anyone who wants to hear the recording can hear the recording. We'll do it that way. And then the world doesn't see it. It's just those who want to see it, right? Is that good, Gloria? Does that feel better? Okay. All right. We'll do it. So welcome, Teicherts. We skipped a couple of chapters. We skipped chapter 14, which is our love story? No, that's chapter 20. We skipped chapter 20 also. And chapter 14 is, do you guys know the title off the top of your head?
Dating Adventures.
Okay, Dating Adventures. And then we get chapter 20, our love story. So we're wanting them to tell us about their dating adventures and their love story. Here, we just invited them to tell us straight out. So hearing it straight from them will be good.
Well, and we would encourage you to read it. Jeff actually went through 1,500 pages worth of text messages so that he could quote us when we were dating.
Well, we read it.
There were some tense moments in there.
Yes, we did read it. We just skipped talking about it. So everybody, if you have the book, make sure that if you did not read it, just because we didn't discuss it.
Yeah, you'll get a different flavor reading it than hearing it from us, but we certainly can share.
Has anybody read it? Chapter 20?
Has anyone read chapter 20?
No, but I've heard you speak before, so I have a general idea, because your stories, whenever you were on a podcast or something, your story gets shared. And then when you were on, who's the podcast?
Was it the Flameless Fireside?
Nope. No.
What?
Two ladies do it.
Was it Peggy and Sharon?
Yes.
Okay.
We've never been on their show.
It was dating
Really?
potential. Dating to your potential. Did you guys share with them? Oh,
we've never been on there.
Maybe they shared a video in their podcast on their website.
Or mentioned it.
Maybe that's what it was.
Well, anyway, you want us to just start talking?
Yes, but I want you to know who's here first. I do want you to know who's here first, because that's to me the most important. Everyone who's here. I love this group. And this is only a fraction of our book club. There are many who have texted to say they weren't able to make it today for whatever reason. But I want to introduce you to all of them.
Make sure to be duly offended.
Yes. So each of you guys introduce yourselves and where you're from. and why you're here today, what you want to hear from Cathy and Jeff, or we'll ask questions too. So if you don't have anything off the top of your head, that's okay. Okay, start with Heather. Because you're at the top of my screen.
I'm Heather. I'm in Alberta, Canada. I just want to know.
What city?
I'm in Medicine Hat, so a southeastern corner. Basically the
Where
army
McGrath
equipment.
is?
Oh yeah. McGrath is about an hour and a half, 2 hours towards the east.
So my mother's best friend was from McGrath. I think actually, Sheri, well,
Right, yeah.
Sheri knows her daughter who I dated for a while.
Oh,
Yeah, when we were both divorced and single.
Yeah.
But yeah, they were from McGrath, and there's a lot of members of the church up there actually.
oh, McGrath is like an 80-90% LDS.
Yeah, it's the little Salt Lake City up in Canada.
Well, McGrath. Well, there's a hamlet like McGrath, Raymond. All those little towns there are very high dense LDS, but lots of young families or retired.
Yeah.
Gotta get the
Anyway,
percentage.
you know Julie, what's her married name? Julie Kendrick Erickson.
Yeah.
Okay.
Julie Erickson, yeah.
Her mother and my mother have been best friends for years, and they had high hopes for us when we were dating, but it didn't happen. But she's awesome. I mean, no, don't get me wrong. We just weren't the right match, but
It's really nice to meet you, Heather, in Canada.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's nice to meet you guys as well.
Yeah, Heather was excited that you guys were coming on, so I think she might have some questions, hopefully. So that's
I
good.
always-
Yeah. Okay, Antonio.
Hi, Antonio Briseño. I live in Colorado Springs, Colorado.
Very good.
Okay, awesome.
And
Nice
Jeanette.
to meet you.
Oh, were you coughing? I've been coughing too, Jeanette. So I don't know if you have just introduce yourself, Jeanette, and tell us where you're from.
Hi, I'm Jeanette. I'm from the south coast of England.
Okay, awesome.
wow.
Mhm.
What city?
It's called Poole. It's quite a big holiday area. The town next to us is called Bournemouth, which it's more well known, but it's just lovely here. I
I
live 5
have a
minutes.
master's degree in English legal history.
Oh, do you?
So I've never been to England, confession,
I haven't
But-
either, but my dad served his mission in England.
Oh, did he?
but I know a lot of its history, and you know, we owe the English a lot in America, actually. We don't realize it because we fought this war of independence, but we do. Anyway,
Oh,
Yeah, I love it here. Feel very blessed to live
well, I'm
where I
going to
do.
come visit you soon.
yeah. We're all gonna have a party over there. Okay, Michael.
Hey,
Hey.
I think I know Jeanette. It's been a long time though.
Yeah.
Yeah, like a year at least, maybe.
Yeah, it was during lockdown, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah, we
it's
were in
good
a
to see you
group.
again. Yeah,
Nice
and
to
I
see
think
you, Michael.
you too. And I think I
We
know
also know
Antonio.
Michael.
Yes, we have met at one of your things. It's good to see you guys. I'm glad to be able to hear your story in person. And I think I know Antonio too, right? Aren't we in the PQ group?
Yep, in the P Crew group.
Yeah, anyway, so sorry. And then of course Sheri. So yeah, I live in Washington State. So
I used to live in Washington State.
yeah, didn't you on the west side?
Yep.
Like
Whatcom
Auburn.
County up in the corner.
Oh, really? I lived in holy cow. I served in Seattle Mission and I served in Cedar Woolley.
Oh, yeah, I know Cedar Woolley well. I walked like 8 miles in their 4th of July parade the year I ran for office up there.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So you ran in Whatcom County or in Skagit County?
It was Whatcom, Skagit, San Juan, and Island counties.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, his son is
Wow.
actually buried up in Blaine,
Oh, okay.
at the Canadian border.
Yeah, right. I was gonna say that's right by the border. I was just up there a few times not too long ago. Cool.
I love how many connections the Teicherts have. They can connect with every person, every single person. There's something that connects them. It's amazing. Love it. Gloria.
Hi, I'm from Italy.
Oh wow, that's
far,
awesome.
far
Are
away.
you in Italy now?
Yeah, I'm living here.
Okay.
I'm kind of jealous. I heard that people who are gluten sensitive in America can come and eat all the gluten they want in Italy, and I look forward to doing that someday.
Yeah, there are many Americans living here. Yeah, that's true also.
Is it because they prepare their wheat differently than we do, or
Mhm.
flour?
They process it different. So we put pesticides on ours to kill it instead of letting it die naturally, and
Hmm.
it
Why
makes-
don't we just buy their flour? Send it to us.
I would love to.
Or Dad, send us 100 pounds of flour. You know, that would be an expensive shipment, wouldn't it?
I think we just go to Italy often. I think that's the
Yeah,
answer.
there you go. Or move there.
Well, yeah,
Lenora.
I have that idea too. Vacation
Yeah.
home in Italy.
Mhm.
And I've
No,
never been
that's-
to Italy either.
Oh,
Gloria, is that the plan, Gloria? Because that's pretty brilliant.
You need to have a look. It's very different than US.
You're
I
like,
was in US, so it's really different.
it's
But
a
it's
tourist
more-
thing.
Sorry?
It's a tourism ploy.
Here?
You're trying to get us to visit by the gluten thing. That's
No,
your
I
whole goal,
was,
right?
I mean, I was in US years ago, and I've seen the huge differences.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
sure it's very
But
beautiful.
it's okay. I mean, it's
Yay,
Italy is
but-
very old. We have very old cities and very small cities.
We have this is so fun to connect with everyone. I still want to stay on task. Lenora, you just came in as we're introducing ourselves. Do you want to introduce yourself and tell us where you are from? Or where you're calling from, if you want to. It's
I grew up
Lenora.
in Boise, and then when I got married, I moved to Fruitland, Idaho. So I live on the border between Idaho and Oregon. And so let's see.
Is that Owyhee County?
Huh?
Is that Owyhee County?
Actually, it's Payette County.
Okay.
So, but yeah, and like our host, I actually majored in music. So I have my bachelor's in violin performance and my master's in violin pedagogy. But
Cathy is a professional violinist herself.
Yep. Yeah.
Hello,
So-
fellow violinist.
Yeah.
hello.
It'd be fun to play together sometime.
Yeah, it would. It would. I saw some of your stuff when you were talking about teaching Suzuki and stuff like that. I was like, oh, I'm familiar with this stuff. So
Yeah.
anyway, but yeah, I homeschool my kids, but my kids are like about ready to fly the coop. So I'm having to figure out like where I'm going from here.
Yeah.
So it's keeping me pretty busy.
But that's interesting because you're so focused, I'm sure, on your children and their needs, and then all of a sudden they're gone, and they're like, now my needs are coming into play.
If you want to talk that over sometime, we'll do a free coaching session. Just let us know.
Yeah, that's good. Very good. Well, thank you. And Teichert, thank you for joining us today. I just wanted I wanted you to see who's here. And as people come in, we won't interrupt you, but we will allow them at some point to introduce themselves.
Yeah, that was fun. I'm really glad to know a little bit about each person here.
Yeah, it's so good.
So, Sheri, I think maybe the way to approach this, since they haven't read chapter 20, is for us to give them kind of an overview and then they can ask us questions.
Yeah.
Does that sound right to you?
Yeah, that's just
I
perfect.
mean, it's your show, so you'll do it how you want. But
Well, no, it's yours too. I just wanted it to be spontaneous, and my promise, I guess what people I think are here expecting is a recap of the book. Everyone has read it, and we've all done the book club, so it's not going to be necessary to do too much detail about that. But anyway, so there might be times when people will bring up topics or whatever. So we'll just keep it open conversation.
yeah, sure.
You guys share your story, and then if you guys want to throw in the chat questions or comments, we'll just keep it an open, interactive conversation. So
Sounds good.
I'd like to say one thing at the outset before we launch into the story that isn't in the book actually, but we've been chewing on this thought recently, and that is that we have come, especially in recent years, with the loss of my son and the loss of her best friend and the loss of a job I had that I really liked, things like this, to understand that God is in the details of our lives. And even with the loss of my son, I can say, you know, I don't understand, but I trust you. Now, every time I've lost a job, as I think back on it, something better was on its way. And in the last time, it was literally one day early. But the reason I bring this up is I think the biggest mistake I ever made was leaving Western Washington at the time I did, because I had 2 kids. One of them was almost at an age where he could just choose who he wanted to be with, and he came to be with me as soon as he could. My younger son, however, remained there with his mom, and I had him about 3 months of the year. On a good year, closer to 4. And it wasn't really, I know he needed more from me than that. And at the time, I think the Spirit was telling me that, but it had a lot of noise in my head to compete with about having lost my marriage, and my business was slow because my mind was on other things. And for me, it was trying to I wanted desperately to get back what I had lost, to get back to where I was before the divorce and all that. And I had this opportunity to come to Utah with a law firm, and it wasn't an ideal setup, and it wasn't the right area of law for me. And there's all kinds of reasons why it didn't really work. The biggest one being that I didn't really have the life energy to build something new at that time. And so I came to Utah in 2010, late 2010, and just struggled for 2.5 years. And just barely, I mean, was practically homeless at a certain point in time. And as I think about it, I started to get my life back together at the beginning of 2013, after it had really punished me for a while, and moved to Texas for 3 years. When I came back from Texas, it was the end of 2015. At the same time, I was going through my second divorce, and my younger son had come to live with me at that point. And so we moved here, and literally, let's see, I moved here the end of November 2015. And I met Cathy in March of 2016.
St. Patrick's Day.
Oh, that's right.
So 4 months after I moved back with my son. And I think if I had put God on the throne instead of myself, I could have skipped the ridiculous second marriage, the jobbing around, the aimlessness, the pain of being away from my younger son for all that time.
Although, would he have been in a position that she needed you to take him had you not left?
Impossible to say.
So, I mean, I think you change anything and it changes everything. And I don't know that we can recreate the past in just the right way, you know. But I think your point was,
the point is that if I had let God be on the throne, at least in theory, I could have skipped all of that pain and trying to build something and having nothing work and feeling like I was stuck in quicksand for 4 years. And ultimately probably would have met and married the same person.
but if we were to change my past and take out my painful second marriage, I probably would have gotten more intentional about dating and found someone sooner.
So anyway, so we met, and that takes us up to where we met. And do you want to say some stuff about
Okay, well, interestingly enough, I mean, we all do like the flirting thing, right? With people who we're interested in, and or you know, maybe throw out things on singles book Facebook pages, just thinking, okay, well, what will stick, what will work, you know, like what will attract someone into my life. And I remember wearing a shirt that said, "I'm looking for my lucky charm," and I posted it on a singles group. and I remember thinking, just like everything else, this isn't gonna work.
Yeah.
That is the day Jeff requested my friendship on Facebook.
That's true.
Yeah. So was that
And-
on March 17th?
Of 2016. And then we went on our first date in July, because at the time, I guess he was dating someone. And when they broke up, then, you know, he asked me out.
Yeah, someone I had dated before my second marriage.
Yeah. And I didn't normally accept friend requests, but I noticed him and he had noticed me. And what we noticed about each other is that we would comment positively and constructively with good energy in the Facebook groups, and that stood out.
Yeah.
In a good way.
I mean, there is something different. You know, Cathy wasn't coming on and answering everything with my ex-husband was a covert narcissist and these are all the ways he ruined my life.
Or dating sucks and I hate everybody that I've met so far. You know, none of that. Like,
there are some comments like that. It's true.
What's that?
There are comments like that. There are stuff like that.
Well, and it's not that we didn't have our challenges with formers and with dating. It's just that wasn't what we wanted to focus on. And so we were intentionally focused on the things that are good so we could attract more of that into our lives.
Yeah, that's good. And that's
but
what
we had almost immediately, I mean, it's funny, when I first happened onto her picture, on Facebook, like I clicked on her profile when I read one of her comments, and I remember thinking two things. She looks like a 1940s movie star. And the second thing was, she's going to be important to me. I didn't know why necessarily.
Really important.
I won't say that I knew at that point that we were going to get married. I think I couldn't have handled that much truth at that moment, but I knew that she was going to be important, and I felt like I needed to follow up on that.
And I didn't think too much about it. In fact, I didn't even make the connection to St. Patrick's Day and that shirt I posted, thinking like, oh, that's not going to work, until we were engaged 2 years later.
Wow.
And we got one of those Facebook friend anniversaries and made the connection.
Wow, that's very cool.
Yeah, sometimes when you meet your person, you don't know. And I didn't know for a long time.
Jeff,
right, so you would think after this sort of auspicious beginning that everything went smoothly until the temple, but if you read chapter 20, you'll find out it didn't.
It's a roller coaster. Most people say it's their favorite chapter.
She turned me down for the second date, actually. I said, maybe we can get together again. And she said, I've thought and prayed about it, and I don't think so.
And we broke up 3 times before it stuck. So,
wow.
Well, twice.
Twice,
And you
because the
stayed
first
in
time
hope.
was
What's
after the
that?
first date.
You had your hope anchored. Your hope was anchored.
Well, what's interesting is during the year that we were just friends, which was all of 2017. So it was on and off in 2016 and from the summer until December 27th or 23rd, which incidentally is my birthday. Or sorry, my sister's birthday, not my birthday. My sister's birthday, her anniversary, and the day that Jeff's mom died, like, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years later, something like that. 6 years later. Yeah. Anyway.
She died a year ago.
So December 23rd is the day we broke up for more than a year. And then,
wow.
yeah. And what's interesting is during that 2017, we both were doing things intentionally to prepare for marriage, whatever the spirit guided us to do. And the thing that the spirit guided Jeff to do was to pare down his belongings.
That was one thing.
Well, yeah, there were many things, but the thing that really like synced in a way that like, I don't think it could have been as good if we were together and trying to plan it, right? It was the spirit guiding. And I sold my home. I moved to this house. And I was downsizing, but when I was downsizing, I got some new bedroom furniture and I left drawers empty.
Yeah.
And
space for him to put his socks in there.
Yeah, well, like basically I
Yeah,
was
my stuff
making
is
room
in-
even though I was downsizing, and he was making room by downsizing his stuff. And when he
I
moved
mean, like
in,
2/3 of it went.
and when he moved in, it all fit. Like it just all fit like
Perfect.
perfectly. It's crazy. Yeah, it was. And yeah, sometimes we get no's until we get a yes, and sometimes that can be with the same person. But that's the thing I wanted was no's.
We always say that, and it's in our book too, that I'm the sail and she's the anchor, and you need both. And I had this, dreamer sort of vision about what we could be like together, and she had the sort of practical, we're not ready part of it.
Mm.
And so I think maybe both were needed if you look at the whole story in retrospect.
Yeah.
I'll tell you guys something funny, and I think you might have read this in the book, but our second date was a NICMO.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to write a book that was nothing but a lot of Latter-day Saint idealism. I mean, I'm an active, devoted member of the church. It's not that I don't believe or anything like that, but I didn't want to create something that just always towed the party line and said, oh, if you have NICMOs, you'll never get married and you won't.
Yes.
But it did show that our relationship at that time had some more shallow features.
And I'm not suggesting that people go out and have NICMOs or anything like
Although I would say before our first date, we had like the most epic phone conversation I think I've ever had in my whole life. Because like that's the one thing that we've always had really good is conversational chemistry.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, what kept us friends all that time when we were not dating. And Lenora had a really great question in the comments. She said, it seems that the counsel is usually to move on and not redo relationships that weren't successful in the past. How did you know it was wisdom to go back and keep trying? The thing is we didn't keep trying. Actually, for the whole year that we weren't together, we never, ever planned to get back together, ever.
We did have some boundaries that we set. When we broke up, I talked to my therapist the same day, and Cathy had chosen to do the breakup. I didn't want to, but so my therapist told me, now you're the one who's sort of been dealt this blow, so you need to decide what's good for you. And she said, if I would recommend that you not even talk to Cathy or have any contact for at least a few months. And she said, you decide when you're going to have contact and how much. So I told her this, probably not in the nicest way. But
don't call me, I'll call you. Is that what you said?
Well, yeah,
No,
it did say that.
No, what he actually did was,
but I did say, don't call me, I'll call you.
I'm going to give you a piece of my mind right now. I'm going to tell you how upset I am. I'm going to emotionally vomit on you. And then I'm going to tell you, my therapist said not to talk, so don't call me.
Yeah.
It wasn't quite that harsh, but yeah, that's kind of what happened.
And that's kind of when, like, in the process of dating, when I would get a distinct impression that it's a no, like, and I do the breakup thing, and I never ghosted. I always did the brave thing and talked to them. And in this case, because it was near Christmas, I even gave him presents. And I think he felt bad, and so he brought me presents too, like after that. But like
I thought I brought you presents the same day.
No, it was like, Christmas Eve, I think.
Oh, well, that was a different thing, because I felt bad about how the breakup had gone.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That was
so
a different set of presents.
That's kind of partly how we became friends, right? Is that like, it was kind of like, okay, here's some gifts. Now I hurt you. Oh, I feel hurt. Okay, I'm sorry that I reacted, right? And so, but I think at first it was kind of like, okay, like maybe I made a good choice here. And so this is a very fair question from Lenora. Is like, how did we how'd
you know to keep going, right?
But we didn't keep going. That's the thing is it wasn't for a whole year until we developed a healthy friendship.
We didn't even talk for like 3 months.
Very much.
And
Yeah. I mean,
then-
I think there was thank you for the presents and Happy New Year. And then we didn't talk much the first of
Did
2017.
you guys stay connected on Facebook all that year too?
We were acquaintances.
Yeah, I think we were,
each other's
kind of like limited. Yeah.
But yeah, I asked her to come to a family event with me because the girl I was dating, that story's in the book too, but she dressed kind of frumpy and didn't always do her hair. And I was afraid at this particular event, it might be awkward. She might not fit in. And so I asked Cathy to come as my +1. And then I thought,
I
If
think
I
you
can't
wanted me to
be-
be your trophy friend.
Yeah.
It
He
was,
knew you would
it
dress
was a
that.
more kind of upscale event. And I was just thought, I don't want to be married to someone ultimately who I'm not proud to be with.
Yeah.
So
Well, and he knew how much I love Minerva Teichert, and it was actually a family gathering at her exhibit at BYU.
the museum hosted it for our family.
Well, and there's, I don't know if it's somewhere else in the book or in our love story, but back when I was getting divorced, there was one person in my former husband's family that was very empathetic. She didn't feel like she had to choose, and she was my friend. And we went to the temple a few times. And when we went to the temple, she pointed out Minerva Teichert. She said, I love this artist. And then Minerva Teichert just kept resonating with me. I would stare at Queen Esther in bridal rooms where, I'd gotten married before and then divorced and ponder my life. And the one she pointed out to me was Christ and the Lost Lamb. And for those of you who may not know, Minerva is Jeff's great grandmother, and he knew her until she died when he was 9. So he knew her personally. And I was kind of mesmerized by that, like when I found that out. And so I think another reason.
So she married me because she likes my great grandmother.
Well, the thing is, there were just a lot of
Yeah.
cool things about our relationship that actually made it really painful to break up that first time. We just weren't ready for
That was
each
the
other.
second time, though.
Well, first time, the second time is really the big one. The first time was more kind of like, let's just not keep dating, right? But the second time was like, okay, this relationship needs to change now. And part of it was fear. So that's the thing. So this is kind of in addressing Lenore's question again. But part of my decision was fear of real possibility with anyone. And this is kind of where I started to realize, okay, I'm saying that I'm dating intentionally and that I'm trying to find my companion, but because I've had 2 failed marriages, I am so scared of commitment. To anyone that could actually become a long-term thing, because I want to belong to myself. I don't want to belong to someone else who's going to mistreat me. And so I was very hesitant to enter a relationship. And when I did, it was typically to someone I couldn't see a future with. And I realized I was doing this on
Which was true
purpose.
when she broke up with me.
But subconsciously, if that makes sense. Like it was kind of, I wasn't aware of what I was doing until I could see the pattern, right? And so ultimately, the person I ended up with kind of in the interim, because I couldn't see a long-term future, I was like, okay, I gotta change my pattern here. And when I sold my house and I moved here, I went back to my maiden name, and I started like becoming into myself. And I kind of took a break from dating. And then when I started dating again, I did it with the intention of actually like being brave enough to settle down with someone who I could commit to long term. And, I made mistakes along that way too, and there were a couple people that I would date again after I hadn't, but it would be quickly apparent usually that like, that wasn't the right way. Right.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
I don't want to interrupt you, but I do want to interject that piece right there. What you're saying is something about Cathy that we've learned throughout the book is that Cathy was always able to remain friends with everyone that she dated. So
Not
there was
everyone,
always.
but most of them.
You were willing.
well, you were friendly, I should say. You're always willing to be friends. Yes. So that's something that is also answers Lenora's question too, is that it's more that her heart is connected to people and relating and connecting with people. So I think that makes a difference too, in that you were not totally broken up. You might say this is not going to work for marriage right now, but I still feel connection to you, Jeff. You know, I mean, somewhat internally.
Like I still care,
Yeah.
because I think that's sincere love and
Yeah.
you know, so I mean, and that's what I wanted from a partner too, is
Yeah.
someone who sincerely cared about me, whether I chose them or not. And when he wrote that epic
Well, wait,
letter,
let's
okay, yeah, should we?
let's say something else before about the letter.
Okay.
Okay, so one thing I said, Cathy and I felt similar about former dating partners, and like there's one of my former dating partners we double date with now and then. We stayed at her house when we were in town for my mom's funeral. You know, and there's
Jeff actually was able to stay friends with a lot of people he dated.
there's a number of them. That particular one was in my mom's ward. But anyway, yeah, so we both believe in that. However, when we stopped dating and then we took that break from talking and ultimately came back together as friends, there were some boundaries that I insisted on, and she agreed to them. And one was, I don't want to be around when anyone you're dating is around, and I don't want to hear about who you're dating or anything about your dating life. Because
I had a guy that like I dated who was like really open to it, and he nicknamed all my boyfriends, and he nicknamed Jeff Legal Eagle.
Legal Eagle. That's awesome. I
just knew that would be painful for me, and so that was a boundary I adopted. And so we didn't talk to each other about who we were dating. Neither of us did talk to the other one about who we were dating. And so that year we remained friends, and we saw more and gradually kind of more and more of each other. She came to my son's mission homecoming in May.
We both had this sense that we were going to get married in 2018. We didn't know to who or like how it was going to go, but
well, I was praying about it because I had two different people I was seeing, and I knew I had to choose between them.
And I was seeing two people I was trying to choose between, and this time they had real possibility. Like they had a lot of the qualities I wanted, and so I was really seriously considering them, and I narrowed it down to those two.
Right.
By the end of 2017.
Yeah, and the answer I kept getting when, would you hand me a cough drop? The answer that I kept getting when I was praying about it, and this started probably about November, and I prayed about this a couple of months, but the answer that I kept getting was, the woman you love is right in front of you, and it's not either of these two. And I mean, I was pretty nervous about approaching this again because we'd already broken up a couple of times, to Lenora's point.
Well, and maybe I should insert here, and this is what the love story does, is so Jeff wrote it, and then I inserted my point of view and my experience with him, and that was kind of fun. You know, because we each have our own view of a relationship. And anyway, I wanted to insert here that I got really, really sick in November of 2017. In fact, I had an upper respiratory infection of some kind for like 6 weeks straight, from Thanksgiving until the middle of January. And that then avalanched an autoimmune disease on fire I didn't know I had. And I didn't actually get the correct diagnosis till about 1.5 years into our marriage, along with small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, which was causing major digestive issues. And I had herniated discs in my back, and I had back pain for a long time, but it had gotten really, really, really bad. Anyway, that's kind of in hindsight, right? But I didn't know what I had going. I just know I felt horrible. And and feeling horrible, like, because I was dating a lot of people at the time. There were people who
As
just,
usual.
and yeah, there were people, well, I mean, but this time it felt different because I was going at it from the knowledge that, okay, I can easily fall for someone who I have no future with, and that's not what I really, really want. And I'm going to be braver this time. Anyway, but it was interesting. It was like a sick test, like it was maybe an adversity test, that like everybody that was a fair weather friend disappeared. And I mean, the reason why I'd narrowed it down to the two, it was easy. They were the ones that showed up with soup. They're the ones who showed up with blessings. They're the ones that showed up like to hand me Kleenex when I was just like, and Jeff was the third one. Like, he was the one I wasn't dating, who was the friend who showed up that way. I mean, he even took me to Instacare Thanksgiving weekend, and it turned out I had strep. Anyway, and
Good test. You passed that test. Good job.
but the thing is, it wasn't an intentional test. It just worked out that way. But yeah, but it made me really foggy minded, and it made it very hard to decide, very hard to choose,
Well,
like in my brain.
Here's the other thing. When she's in the process of choosing, I'd kind of decided at that point that if she would have me, that's what I wanted. And I wrote her a letter on New Year's Eve. I actually had a date for New Year's Eve, but she got sick. And so I stayed home and we bought a zoo and had my 30 seconds of insane courage or whatever it is. And I wrote her this letter, sort of telling her about how things had changed with me. And I said, if you still want my heart, you have it. It's still yours. That's that's what I want, and I want to date you for marriage, basically.
And in the same letter, he said, but if you don't choose me, I will always love and care about you, and I want what's best for you. And that, for me, was the wisdom to consider him.
Yeah.
And the other part of the wisdom to consider getting back together for me was that because my brain was foggy minded, and I'm a very logical person, and I like to think things with my head, I had to rely more on the spirit and on my heart. And choosing, and then I got this inspiration to go to Africa to visit my sister who had just gotten married.
This was after the letter. Yeah, the letter was New Year's, and that was March.
Well, she got married on the 23rd of December, on her birthday, on our 1 year anniversary of breaking up. And nobody had met her husband, and they were working on immigration paperwork, and because Jeff's a lawyer, I was like, I want Jeff to go with me. And so I asked him, and he's like, yeah. So that was kind of the test, was like, can we be together 24/7 for 10 days and still like being together? And it turned out we did. And we got engaged on a safari.
Chasing zebras and hippos.
Chasing wild zebras in the fields. Yeah, it was awesome. And we actually were hiking up this cliff, and this is like when he proposed, was we were hiking up a cliff, and I was like saying, I'm winded, I'm out of breath, like this is hard, like we're hiking uphill, and this is kind of how life is, especially after divorce, especially after hard things, after breakups and whatnot. And he's like, yeah, but we've got strong footholds. I'm like, oh, okay. So like, if you think about hiking up a mountain and having it be hard, if you got strong footholds, you've got foundation, you've got help, you've got assistance, right? And he proposed right then and there. And then no. he didn't propose right then. What happened is I said, I want to get this on camera, like right here, right now with this terrain. And so I started filming him. Like, we should release this sometime.
Oh yeah. We haven't released it yet.
So we basically had the conversation again. And then he said, will you marry me? Like, we've got strong footholds. Will you marry me? And I said, yes. And he said, cool.
How cool is that? Yeah, you need to release that. That's very
It
cool.
was a pretty cool moment.
Yes. Yeah. And so what are your strong footholds today, looking back between there and today? What are your strong footholds?
Well, let me tell you something about that. In the we've been married 5.5 years as of November 11th, 5 years and 6 months. In that time, Cathy was really sick for 2 years, the first 2 years.
Yeah, because all that stuff I mentioned, I didn't even know what it was. I just knew I was not functioning.
Yeah, 2018 and 2019, she was really sick. She had a three herniated discs in her back, which we ultimately got taken care of with stem cells.
Stenosis and sciatica, and it was
Crying on the floor every night.
Yeah, but yeah, stem cells have taken care of that. Great.
We had a miscarriage in 2019 also. 2019, I lost my biggest client and cut my income by about 1/3 for a while. 2020, things started to get a little bit better. COVID hit, and for whatever reason, that helped my business.
Well, and in the meantime, figuring out that I had Hashimoto's and that I had thyroid issues, and then trying to optimize my thyroid, all of my mental health needs changed. Because thyroid affects your mental health. And so everything I'd been taking up until then was to actually counteract a problem I didn't know I had. And so in optimizing my thyroid, we had to switch up all sorts of meds for me.
Well, and when you have digestive issues, not to give TMI, but your mental health is not good.
Well, the brain and the gut are so connected.
And so that created a lot of challenges.
It's more than a stomach ache. It's like anguish.
And it's like
the mind. And
we're newly married, and there's certain things we just can't talk about and can't deal with.
Well, and even if I had been fine, we had trauma about certain things.
Right. So we're adjusting to a new marriage, and we've got that going on, and severe back pain, and then a miscarriage, and all the the regular grief, and then hormones that go with that. And then let's see, 2020 was a little bit better. 2021, and then by 2022, I was thinking, oh, my 50s have been my best decade. Everything is, people would ask me how you're doing. I have a very blessed life. 2020 was the year that we wrote Intentional Courtship, and then published it in 2021.
Yeah, and that's in 2021 is when we started our podcast and YouTube channel. Podcast was early 2021, and then our YouTube channel is later 2021. And
2021, my son Henry really started calling me 5 times a week, sometimes a few times a day.
Was also when we did our life coach training, right?
Yeah.
2021,
it seemed like a great year, and everything was perfect. And like I said, my son Henry he had been very hard. Contact had been very sporadic. Throughout 2021, he was calling me several times a week. We had this great blossoming relationship. 2022 rolls around, and it seems like it's going to be the same. My first grandchild is born, beautiful little girl, and still the light of our lives in a lot of ways. A lot of things were going good. And then August hits, and my son Henry, that I was just talking about, got killed in a rock climbing accident. And so that sort of takes the wind out of your sails. That happened like a week. Yeah. That happened like a week after being told that I wasn't going to get my merit letter at the Attorney General's office for another 6 months. And I knew immediately my tenure there was limited. And so we're in an employment crisis. Then my son gets killed.
Oh, and then we come home to like a $23,000 lawsuit.
Right. Got sued, got served with process right after my son's funeral. And then that was in October. And then in November, we both got COVID for a month, speaking at a conference at BYU. And then in December, my mother died. And that wasn't the slow descent. It was like she failed rapidly over a month.
Which is actually what she wanted.
Right.
It, like when she's like, when I start losing my mind, just go out and shoot me. And when she started losing her mind, she just declined into death fast. I think it was her will.
Yeah.
Right. And thankfully, the employment crisis resolved in early last year in April. But then this year in the fall, Cathy's best friend.
The employment crisis and this lawsuit resolved the same day. I mean, like many, many months later.
Right.
Kind of miraculous.
I mean, the
really,
lawsuit
truly
was frivolous
miraculously.
and settled for a small fraction of what they were demanding.
I mean, I would say one of our footholds in this process, like, was that we had a lot of peace, even with all the money stuff, like after the death of his son. And yeah, I guess Gloria has to go, but thank you for being here, and hopefully she can get the recording later if she wants. Okay. Anyway, we oh, where was I? Oh, we had peace. We had a lot of peace throughout that, and I don't know why. But I can tell you the best marriage therapy we ever did, like, because we both had 2 previous marriages and we've had therapists for those marriages. And the best therapy we've ever done is when we didn't do it together. We went to, we each went to an EFT specialist,
EMDR.
or no, EMDR, sorry. An EMDR specialist. Do you guys know what that is? It's rapid eye movement therapy, and it helps release trauma from the body. And there's quite a few things that, like, when we couldn't talk about before, just started being easy, like, which was great. And I think that was one of the footholds that we needed in order to go into this, like, financial crisis. Because we just had peace, like, beyond understanding. And I don't think it was just spiritual. I think it was also emotional. We'd released trauma from our bodies from past marriages and the financial, like, complications of those. And we were able to be, like, faithful and believing that, okay, if God wants us to keep doing Lily, if he wants us to keep serving the way we do, he knows what we need, like, kind of in fact, it's the lilies of the field thing. It's like, God knows what we need. He knows how to clothe the fields. He knows how to support us.
Well, in fact, the job that I got one day before I was going to be fired at the Attorney General's office pays $30,000 a year more.
Yeah.
He actually got upgraded in every way. Like, he moved from the 4th floor to the 11th floor. It's a different building, but, like, he, like, literally upsized his job, like, in a way that he never would have if he had.
He upsized for wife too. He upsized for a woman.
Yeah. I mean, and I say that all the time, that I thought it was a tragedy when me and my first wife, Julia, got divorced. But if that hadn't happened, I wouldn't have Cathy. And for various reasons, that first marriage was really only half a marriage. I mean, there was never the joy that I often experience now.
And a lot of it's because of who we've become through the process of adversity and recovering and healing intentionally. And that's another thing I want to go back to on the wisdom that Lenora was asking. The one thing that Jeff and I are both good at is self-reflection and taking accountability. And we didn't used to be. We are now, but we didn't used to be. And because we are, I think that's part of the wisdom of reconsidering, getting together, and in the better and what was better timing for us. So it's not like our relationship was bad before. It was just a process. It was a process of figuring things out.
It was not great before. I mean, it had the potential. I think we always knew that. But
we were both living in trauma and fear and reacting, and he wanted
I wanted more security through a little bit more commitment. She
and I was like,
felt threatened
don't
by
push me.
more commitment.
Yeah.
Like, so I felt threatened by a relationship where there wasn't commitment. She felt threatened by one where there was. And so we created all kinds of drama around that theme. And I wanted what I wanted, and she wanted what she wanted, and neither of us could really see the other person's point of view at the time.
Yeah.
And we still,
But-
like in our marriage, I would say that still is a prevalent challenge, but it's one that
Well,
we're
you're
both
not
committed
wanting
to taking on.
You're not wanting to date other people.
No, sorry, no. Once we were committed, that kind of drama ended, because like then we were both in, right? And I am a very loyal person. Once I'm committed, and he knows that. I'm talking about just the stubbornness of us, and when we each have our own ideas and we have to work through those things. But I had the opportunity to marry subdued, laid back people who would always let me have my way. But I don't think that's what was best for me.
I don't think you would have even been happy with that.
Oh,
Making somebody your doormat or
Yes.
whatever.
No, and I
Yeah.
don't want to run over people. I just have a very strong personality, and that's going to happen if I'm with someone who doesn't have a strong personality too.
yeah. Do you know, I want to say something that I loved that that Jeff pointed out. One of our, I think it was our last chapter that we read. And it was that now is the best time for us to do all the work while we're single. It is a good time. I mean, maybe not the best, but you did a lot of the personal development work after you met. And hearing your story, it sounds like a miracle that you are together.
Well, we were both doing it when we met, but
Yeah,
we
okay.
continued and did a lot of it even together.
Well, that you made so many changes. Anyway, that the fact that you wanted commitment and Cathy did not necessarily want the commitment, that would mostly repel most other couples, is what I'm saying. So I'm thinking what a miracle it is that you just stuck with this, listening to the spirit and your heart and the things that you're anchored in. I love that you're always anchored in
Yeah,
that.
getting back together was a miracle, and it's not something either of us anticipated. And I do think there's wisdom, and I wanted to point to another part of
I got
Lenora's
2 more
question.
things to say on that too.
Okay, so wisdom is to not just keep hitting your head against a wall, for sure. And I think there's wisdom in, if you break up, not to be committed to getting back together so much that you don't explore other options. And the thing is I do think doing that is what's important. Like, because, and honestly, I think we ended up in a more healthy, differentiated, and connected kind of relationship, where, you know, we know how to come together and have really close, intimate conversations together, and we know how to be separate and do our own thing and follow the spirit for us personally, which is always good for us relationally. And I guess there's just things that we learned along that journey, I think, that stuck.
Her best friend, who just died of cancer 2 months ago, that was who I had to go to get permission to marry her. I didn't have to go talk to her dad. I had to go talk to Emily. Anyway, Emily, actually, that was the strongest words I'd ever heard her use.
And he will not repeat them here.
She put an F-bomb in there.
Oh.
It was about how I needed to make Cathy happy. But she also made the point, anytime I see somebody getting back together with an ex, I ask what's changed. And I told her, well, what's changed is that now Cathy wants commitment, and back then she didn't.
Yeah.
And so that is one of my answers to Lenora's question is, something needs to have changed before you get back together with a former. You don't just think, well, that was the best thing I ever had up to then, and so
I might as well
I
settle.
might as well settle, or I might as well you know, it was really like, if Cathy had not decided she wanted to really try to make it work with one guy, we wouldn't have ever gotten together. And she didn't want that one the first time we were dating. So
I just wasn't ready.
that's part of that. And then the second thing was, I forgot. Go ahead and it'll come.
I don't know if this is where you were going, but I know for me, interestingly enough, that if for him the thing that changed was I was ready for commitment, the thing for me that changed about him was he was ready to let me choose.
Yeah. Well, after being in those two relationships where you didn't have the freedom to choose, that was really important.
I needed that. Yeah. And that demonstrated real love on his part.
Yeah. Yes. Does anyone have any questions for the Teicherts from this point, or anything more you guys have to share? I don't know if anyone
We go to
Well,
questions.
let's go to questions and yeah.
I don't know if anyone you can just pipe it up. You can just raise your hand or just start talking. There's just a few of us, so it's open conversation.
Most of our group isn't based in Utah, which has been an interesting dynamic for Sheri's mentioned this because it's the second time doing her book, which adds different perspectives. That, like in your book, there's it's what's holding you back. I think the chapter is in the very beginning, and the one thing
What's in the way? Yeah.
What's in the way? The one thing that we recognized in our group, because the distance we've had, was location. That unless you're in the Utah area, location is a huge factor in what's in the way. And experiences talking to other single adults, what would you say now? Like if you had to rewrite that section again, would you include location, and what would you say about it?
Well, and
that's
unfortunately, we don't have a lot of personal experience because we did live in Utah. Well,
I was in Texas for 3 years.
That's true.
And I did get married out there, and it turned out to be a mistake. But I learned some valuable things from it. And I can tell you, to begin with, if you live in a remote location, church-wise, and you want to marry in the temple, and like we did, you have to accept certain realities. And one is, if I sit here and wait for somebody to move into my town, might happen, but I might be waiting a very long time too. And so for me, if I wanted to go on an in-person date, typically they were in Dallas, and I had to drive 5 hours from Midland. So sometimes I would literally get up on a Saturday morning, drive 5 hours, take someone on a date for 2 or 3 hours, and drive another 5 hours back home. And people would ask me, why do you do that? Why would you do that? Well, because I don't want to be alone the rest of my life. And
so I think what you might be saying is you have to be willing to do things that might be hard.
Well, and when I met my former wife, my second wife, she lived in Houston and I lived in Midland. And so I literally flew for dates with her. Now, there were some things in going about that I think I didn't do the best. But
yeah, the thing he learned about long distance relationships is that you're on your best foot when you're together, and you have lots of like those daily times when you might get upset with your kids or whatever that you're not around to see. You're not together enough. And that when we did address this in one of our podcasts with a couple who they've not only had a long distance courtship, but they have a long distance marriage. But like that's how much they like each other. Is
they
like
dated 2 years long distance.
Yeah. And so I would definitely check that out.
But if you're living in a remote location, church-wise, like up in Canada or wherever, I think that long distance dating is probably what you've got to work with. And you just kind of have to accept the limitations of that, the risks of it. There are things you can do, I think, to make that less risky. But yeah, I think what Cathy just said was right. You don't see I didn't see my former wife's explosive anger problem except one time before we got married. And I think that should have been enough. I did take my ring back at that time when that happened. And it's kind of like Maya Angelou says, when someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. Anyway, that came around this in a synchronous way, almost, from hearing something from one of her kids about her anger problem. And I think I should have put those two things together and said, I probably ought not to do this,
And I
even
think
though I was pretty invested by that.
I think we asked some of those questions, and Everett and Celeste spoke to that. And I think they had said it requires more intention and more time if you're dating long distance to really see the character of a person in person.
Do you know the Goodmans, Stephanie Goodman? What's her podcast called?
I know Stephanie Goodman. I don't remember her podcast.
I can't remember the name
We've
of it.
collaborated with them.
There was an episode that Kels and I did one about men, and Cathy and Stephanie did one about women. But on my podcast with Kels, we were comparing notes about, because we had both met a second wife, long distance dating. And I said, yeah, it was probably the funnest dating experience I ever had, because we were always meeting up in these exotic places. Like,
but then the worst marriage.
Yeah, we had a weekend in New Orleans. So fun, I mean, we met up in Fredericksburg, Texas, which is this little German town. I mean, I could go on and on, but it was like dating on vacation.
Yeah.
And so she was always in a good mood and happy, and I didn't get to see the angry side of her very much. And I remember hearing a guy give a talk about how to avoid marrying a jerk, and he said that he talked about The Bachelor and The Bachelorette, where they take one guy dating 30 girls or one girl dating 30 guys and narrow it down until they come up with the one they want to get to know better. But he said, they take them to these exotic locations, to these really beautiful places. And he says, I could fall in love with a turtle in that setting.
Yeah.
And he said, what they ought to do is put them in a room and make them fold laundry for 10 hours.
Yeah. Perfect idea. Do my dishes with me.
So I would say to Heather's question, if you're long distance dating, do it a little different than I did in that dating relationship. Try to take a week off of work here and there and be with them long enough that they let their guard down, be in their home or have them in yours, and see them in their natural habitat more.
Well, I think
the hearts and flowers and romance.
7 months with a man, and we actually got quite close because of the desire and the openness to be vulnerable. Like, you could cold call anytime, you'd have a FaceTime call anytime. We catch each other in the middle of everything and anything. So they weren't always scheduled. It was just, I'm calling you in this moment. And so we saw a lot of the dynamics of each other's lives that way. But that requires an increased level of vulnerability.
Right.
Yeah.
So the trick is not only to find chemistry, compatibility, alignment, but you have to find someone who's also willing to do long distance, because I've met lots of men who we align on those kinds of things, but then they don't want to do long distance, mostly because they have lots of options where they are. Like, then why are you bothering? It adds another layer of, will this work?
Yeah, no, that's actually, I'd never thought about that, but that makes sense. But that doesn't mean you couldn't end up maybe with someone who's willing to relocate, who is in also a more remote area. And that's where online can be very helpful.
Yeah, I think I've had more success and found that those people who are more remote are more willing to do online, because we have to. We're forced into it. It's not an option, it's how it is. So those who don't have the luxury of having lots of dating options close to them, and that, outside of us, we all see that it's a luxury, they're more willing to do it if that's also your only way.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And we do have Lilypod episode 112 is the long distance relationships with Celeste and Everett that I would recommend for those of you who are doing the long distance thing.
I'll share
Yeah.
that.
So I had a question. So on that long distance, I've actually done it before. I married someone long distance. And that didn't work out. But that was a different reason. Long distance, different country. But how would you guys' experience, would you say, preparing for before you go see that person? What do you think is the best things to do before you set up a date where you're going to actually go where they are, which I think is a great thing to do. I have done this before, where I've flown to where the person is and spent time with them, like you're saying, did that for 3 or 4 days. And I think that's great, but I think you're right. It's like a honeymoon phase, and you might not see everything you need to see. They might not see everything about you. And then as Heather said, if they're not completely vulnerable, which was the situation I got into, where they weren't completely vulnerable and they were not sharing everything, how they were feeling, and they were only talking about the positive things. And then it didn't work.
So I think you're talking about two different things. One would be, how can you avoid maybe investing a lot in a person? Like, can we weed them out first? And I think video calls like this can be really helpful because you can see body language and stuff like that. You don't get their energy in the actual room and you're within your vicinity, and that does change things. And so at some point it has to go like in person, but I think there's a lot of things you can do to ask lots of questions, maybe very pointed questions. I mean, and maybe it might seem like an interview, but at the same time, when you're going to be investing long distance, it makes sense that both people would want to have more information.
Yeah.
I think we usually recommend, if people meet online and even if they do a Zoom date, that they don't waste their time doing a lot of, online chatting and even phone calling before they meet for a real date. But if it's long distance, we kind of almost give the opposite advice, because you invest a lot when you buy a plane ticket or whatever to go and see somebody, and you want to have some idea that there's potential.
But it can be the same in at least the video call. Like the video call, you just try to treat that as much as if we're in person kind of thing until you feel like you've asked the questions.
And like Heather was saying, often doing video calls frequently.
Yeah. And I think for those, you get a chance to at least like see their teenagers come in and out and hear how they talk to each other. And, it's not everything. I think long distance dating presents the challenge that you're talking about. It's easy for someone to hide in a long distance relationship. It's much easier than when you live near each other. And even with Cathy and I, we were an hour apart, but I could still come up, almost every weekend and whatever, and even stay overnight a lot of the time, and we could spend a good stretches of time together.
Yeah, so there was an hour between us, but boo-hoo, right? I mean, like you guys have way bigger.
You got way bigger challenges than that. Yeah. And like I said, I would do that dating relationship with my second wife much differently if I had it to do again, or if I was in that situation, heaven forbid.
Well, and to answer Lenora's question, which is how do you find so much opportunity to date? Well, I mean, yeah, Utah's easier, but then there's a lot more weeding to do too, because there's a lot of members here, but the members are not the same. Like from member to member, like how active they are, how much it's in their heart, and in what way is it in their heart? Like, are they active? Do they have a temple recommend? Do they go to church regularly? I mean, is that someone you can partner with in terms of like, do you have shared theology really? So that's the challenge, I think, with living in a highly populated Latter-day Saint community.
I had 4 serious relationships in Texas in 3 years.
But the opportunity to date, though, I think a lot of it came online, even though a
All of
lot of
that
them were along the Wasatch Front and here in Utah. I have a 15-mile radius. I can't, I mean, with my children, like, and so that I couldn't move very far.
So Jeanette has had her hand raised.
Yes, I wanted to hear her question next.
Actually, it wasn't really a question. I was, Jeff covered it really. Have to excuse me, I have bronchitis, so if I cough, I'll quickly
We'd still
go back
like to
on
hear
mute.
your take, even if I covered it. So go ahead.
Excuse me. Let me just get my glasses because I make notes as I go as you go along. One of the things that you were saying was the importance of people seeing people in their own territory, and that's something that I've learned, because then you can watch them interact in their home ward with their family and friends, and you can pick up little cues, can't you, of just little hints of how things are. And being here where I live, the majority of dating in the UK is probably, well, we call it long distance, but it's probably not as long distance for us as it is for you. You know,
the
like
UK is about the size of Oregon.
traveling 2 hours for a date, you think, oh, you know, that's kind of a long way for us. But I think that I've noticed that even in phone conversations or on video calls, if you listen really carefully to how people respond to things and what they say, you can pick up little signs, like little red flags at times. But you have to listen really carefully, don't you, to be able to pick up on those things. I think for me, I'm not ready for dating, but I'm ready for friendships. But the places that I want to meet people are like at the temple. And so if I want to make friends, I'll go to our single adult temple weeks. And that's a really good start, because then we have those things in common, that they have shared values generally in those places. And, you know, I've started, since I've been reading the book, I've actually started attending single adult activities, which I hadn't done before. And again, just by attending those activities, you may not necessarily find the person you're interested in, but you will find qualities in people that you'll think, oh yes, that's the kind of thing that I'm interested in looking for. But it's very different when you're in an area where there are so few active single adults, or single adults who actively participate in any form of single adult activity.
Can I say something about this? Because I think your point is really good. The thing that I think I missed in my second marriage that I needed to have explored better, and lesson learned. But I think with my second wife, I felt a connection with her, but I think really connection is created with vulnerability. And I thought that I was vulnerable with her. I don't really know, looking back. I don't think she was that vulnerable with me. I mean, we had a conversational chemistry, but my first, I've probably, several of you have heard me say this, but on my first date with Cathy, I told her, I've just been laid off from my corporate job, and within the last couple of months, divorced for the second time, and I'm unemployed, but trying to create a business, and I'm couch surfing with my parents.
And it's going to be a while before we get married, but I want you to commit real soon.
I didn't say that, but couch surfing with my parents because I can't afford my life, basically. And I told her all this on the first date. And so I said, yeah, if anything develops between us, I'm open to that, but it's going to take some time because I got to get my life together. Okay, that is not what you say if you're just out to impress.
Yeah.
But I wanted to be honest with her and let her know where I was at. Because
no, I was really glad for that. I needed someone who was upfront and honest, and I knew what I was dealing with. I think that's respectful of every partner to show who you are authentically.
And if I had spun things a little bit, put a little extra jam on the bread to try to make it look like things were better for me than they really were. I think that would have created problems later when she figured out where things are. Now I make a good 6-figure income. I have achieved a lot of the things that I told her I was working on back then. I wasn't full of BS about all that. I've
this
worked
leads
really
me
hard,
to, you marry
but-
a person and with character, you don't marry a situation, because if you marry a situation, situations change.
Well, my former wife, there's a little poetic justice in this, but I don't gloat about it. Her love for me seemed to go up and down based on how much money was in the bank account. And she married somebody who seemed to be really steady and have a really good job and all of that. And he got fired recently and he's in his 50s. Now she's dealing with the same situation with somebody else. But and that's another reason you marry a person, not a situation, because you got to know you're
Throughout your
committed.
life, situations are going to change.
Yeah. But
So-
I think it's so I think that's telling people the truth about yourself. I've got bipolar disorder, or I've got ADHD and I take Adderall, or I have been fired 4 times in my adult life, or whatever the thing may be. You got to talk about that stuff. It's hard if there's somebody you really like and you want them to be impressed by you and like you. It's hard to come up with the stuff, but I mean,
But it's worth it. It's how you connect.
I asked Cathy a really bold question, like on our second date, and I'm not going to tell what it is, but she told me the absolute truth about it. And it wasn't flattering, but I knew after she told me that I could trust her to tell me the truth. So,
Yeah.
so with the long distance dating, I think you can't necessarily make someone else be vulnerable, but you can encourage it by being vulnerable yourself and being a truth teller, an unflattering truth teller. And I had a coaching client recently, that was really enamored with this girl. And I said, I want you to write her a confession of everything wrong with you and every big mistake you've made in your life. And he did it. And he said, now you may not want to date me anymore after I show you this, but I'm giving it to you because I feel like you deserve it. And he did. And she said, I'm almost offended that you thought I would break up with you because of the stuff in that letter.
That's good.
So
Shows her.
Michael, is Michael first?
Yes, Michael has a comment. He didn't raise his virtual hand, but then Antonio will be after Michael.
Hey, cool.
So I really appreciate what you just said, which actually kind of was part of what I was going to say about vulnerability does breed vulnerability. And I'll have to make a confession. I'm kind of an arrogant person. That's actually not too much of a confession. It's probably pretty obvious, but
I know you.
yeah. So anyway, I have a past. Everybody does. And one of the things I do usually pretty early in a courtship relationship is I say, hey, so these are a couple of the podcast episodes based on what that I've appeared on, kind of where I discuss different aspects of my past and stuff, being in recovery or being, with just different things that I've done or have happened to me. And so you might want to listen to this one, or this one's newer, so try this one, but it's up to you. This one's 2 hours, this one's like half an hour. And it's really interesting because, and I wrote even an piece for the Liahona, and I'll share those things, and I've gotten that same reaction of, seriously, you thought that I wasn't going to be interested in you because of that? And so I have to kind of like pull back and apologize and be like, well, I wasn't trying to be presumptuous. I was just trying to be forthright. And but it is, I agree, vulnerability, especially really early, and you can do it long distance. And I appreciate what Jeanette said too, is that I think that you can pick up, if you're really paying attention and you're trying to do it with the spirit, you can pick up on little things. And having done the the long distance relationship on 3 occasions, I can tell you 2 of them were awesome, with some amazing women, and huge amounts of vulnerability. The first long distance one, it was a nightmare, and because there wasn't that vulnerability on either end, I know there was a lot of stuff going on her end, and I didn't know. I could feel it, but I didn't know. Like I wasn't paying enough attention to the spirit. I was in that place of where I was kind of a fear, honestly.
Michael, can I interject just real
Yeah,
quick? And then
yeah,
I'll give it
please.
back to you. I agree with what you're saying. And Jeanette, one of those little things Michael says you can pay attention to, I think maybe the biggest one, is how does this person talk about, if they're divorced, how do they talk about their divorce? Is it,
Are they self-reflective or
are
are they
these-
blaming?
this is the dynamic we had between us and why we didn't work out. This is the mistake that I made. If all they're telling you is my ex was a gaslighting narcissist, or my ex had borderline personality disorder and was crazy, and if that's the stuff they're telling you, that's not vulnerability. I mean, confessing your former partner's sins is not vulnerability. And so, but if they're telling you about themselves in a way that is mature and reflective and gives you a good idea of who they are and who they're becoming, including their past mistakes and embarrassing things and whatever, that's vulnerability.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to distinguish, because sometimes we think someone's been vulnerable with us if they've confessed their ex-spouse's sins and we get confessed ours and we sort of connected over that trauma bond. That's not vulnerability. That it's not hard to tell somebody how your ex-spouse did wrong. It's hard to tell where you fouled up or where you could have done better or where your dynamic was off, and you see that now.
Yeah.
One thing about
Look for that in your partner too.
And one thing about what Michael said and what you experienced is like, can we allow people to show up, or no, your client's experience, I should say, can we allow people to show up for us in a way that we don't expect? Like, can we can we not be presumptuous and share who we are and let them choose, let them decide, rather than kind of pigeonholing everyone into, oh, well, they wouldn't accept me if.
Well, and say why.
Yeah, say why. Yeah.
Well, how could I ever really feel chosen by Jeff if I lied to him about who I am?
No.
You can't even really begin to feel
Or even
accepted
concealed,
if you don't be who you are.
Yeah.
Because then there's always that fear of discovery too.
You have to keep being that thing you're not
Yeah.
forever and ever, because you're afraid if you get found out, you'll lose your relationship. We interviewed Dr. Greg Bear on LilyPod, and that's what he said. The worst thing that can happen to you is, if you're being a chameleon with your dating partner, is to succeed. Because if you do, you have to keep being something you're not. And who wants to do that forever?
So I don't know how many are LilyPod listeners, but that's episode 59. And LilyPod can be found on any podcast app, just about all the major ones.
What was his book again? Dr. Bear's book.
Real Love.
Real
Real
love.
love.
I like it.
Hand me another.
It's another book club option, guys.
And then also YouTube is international, and you can find us, our YouTube channel at Love in Later Years. Like if you just go to the YouTube app and search for Love in Later Years, or Lily Tube. So we've got LilyPod and Lily Tube, and we hope you'll take advantage of them. We've got hundreds of videos, hundreds of podcasts.
Very good.
We should make sure Michael was done, and then
I want to, yeah, I do. I want to make sure Michael was done, and then we can wrap up with Antonio's comment. Okay, very good, Michael.
So much of what you said covered what I was going to say, but I will say that I'm really grateful for that first toxic one, because then it really put me in a good place once I kind of worked through that to be in the next one, which was awesome. But 2 things I learned in there. The first one seems obvious, is that I learned how much I could love someone, but not just that. And you kind of, I think Jeff kind of alluded to this, is that I also learned how much I was willing to let myself be loved,
Mm.
which I
Yeah.
think was even more important, because you can really not allow yourself to be loved.
And that
And
will
that-
damage your relationship.
Yes, and
I feel
it
like-
has a lot to do with loving yourself and accepting who you are, what you've done. And one more thing is, yeah, if by like the second date, if they're saying, well, my ex is this, and they haven't recognized and owned their own part in it, or at least recognized that they have had a part in the failure of a previous relationship, especially a marriage, then to me that's kind of a no.
Well, and we've had
It's a no-go.
we've had some clients who were very abused in their relationship.
Sure.
They're and when they really tried, they know they're human, they know they're not perfect, but like they really tried. I think maybe the important thing there would be like, okay, the accountability in me is, why did I stay so long? Why did I allow myself to be
Sure.
abused? And sometimes that's the accountability we need, is like, what was it in me that like allowed that for so long? And I think most of the time it's, I don't know, I feel like there's a lot of lopsidedness, if that makes sense. Like there is one person who kind of showed up and they were really kind of hard to live with, right? But it seems like most of the time there's always a part we can see, even if that's all it is like, why was I susceptible to staying in an abusive relationship?
Absolutely.
I
good
mean, if
points,
someone heard
thanks.
me and my
What'd
ex-wife,
you say? Sorry.
I said absolutely good points. Thank you.
if someone heard me and my ex-wife talk, though, I would guess you could hardly imagine that we were in the same marriage.
I don't know.
so-
I thought there was some
I mean, it-
correlations from how I heard her talk about it versus you.
Well, yeah, I mean, I suppose there are some commonalities, but I think her story is probably different from mine.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think you would own that you made some big mistakes in your marriage, and he did too, So
We heard recently, and this is just food for thought, and it might be worth saying real quick. Every relationship has 4 components, and it's not usually what we think. We usually think, okay, a marriage is either happy or it's not. A marriage is like its own thing, its own entity, but the thing is, it doesn't have its own brain. We each have brains and come together. And so the 4 components of a relationship are what I think of him, what I think of me, what he thinks of him, and what he thinks of me. So those are the 4 components of a relationship. And really, it's all about, what do we think of ourselves and the other person?
Yeah.
And that's really how we see the relationship.
and that's why you have divorce papers served, or people land in a marriage counselor's office, and one of them is over it. They're done. I am sick of this person, and I'm sick of this and this and this and this. And the other person is, I'm totally blindsided. I thought our marriage was great.
Yes.
And it's because you don't have happy marriages, you have happy people.
Yeah.
And that's another big deal. That was top of my list, was 2 happy people rarely get together and have a lousy time.
And the
So
thing
marry
is,
a happy person and be a happy person, and you're probably going to get there.
and what's cool is,
But-
if the work is to become a happy person, you're going to be happy no matter what, which is really cool. Like,
Yeah.
whether it happens or not. And then one thing I know this was supposed to be a recap of the book. So before we go to Antonio's thing and wrap up, I just wanted to mention that, remember, there's 3 sections in the book. There's the peace, progress, and pairing up. And we do have 1 course out already, and we have 2 courses outlined, and we're preparing to film right now. And that is, so the peace part is, or at least for the one that we created, was life design after divorce. So for those of you who are divorced, we have a life design after divorce course that's already available on demand. The second course, and it expands on the book, like it doesn't follow it. It's more like an expansion of, like, with all our life coaching skills,
Yeah.
tools. And the second one is courting with confidence. you know, getting out there and courting with confidence. And then pairing up with your person will be the third one. So
well, we're also doing a mini class that should be out in the next month, probably, on finances and how to thrive after divorce financially. And that's going to be cheap. I mean, we haven't figured
yeah,
out
we're trying
that
to make
price,
that like as short
$50
and
or something.
so as quick and as inexpensive as possible, because if those are of you who are trying to rebuild your lives financially, you know, we recognize you don't have a lot of time or money, and you want to be able to put that into a career and rebuilding, but we want like to be able to support you in doing that, because a lot of it does have to do with our mindset, and how we feel about ourselves after divorce can be challenging.
The course will have some practical stuff too, like budgeting and, you know, things like that. But
Yeah,
it
we'll
all
have a
ties
dose of
together,
both.
doesn't it? That's why there's life coaches, because it really does all tie together with how we feel about ourselves. And yeah, Antonio, I don't know if this is segue to what you're saying, but he's good at the law of attraction, and he talks a lot about that and how
awesome.
that makes such a difference. Anyway, I don't know if that's what you're going to say, Antonio, but I did want to bring that up, that it all ties together. Yeah. Okay, Antonio. You're on.
No, I wasn't going to mention that at all, but I will have to say, Jeff and Cathy, thank you very much for being here. It's been amazing. I haven't been able to finish the book completely, but what I have read has been amazing, and I've enjoyed Sheri bringing us all together, and you know, because this has been an amazing group, and the comments, and I've learned, you know, a great deal from everyone and their experiences. My experiences are kind of old. I'm in a different situation. So yeah, so my question was, I do my best to be vulnerable. I don't think that is I don't want to be arrogant, but I don't think that is one of the challenges I have.
It comes naturally.
Maybe, I don't know. Sheri, you probably.
He works on it too. Yeah, he does. He does a lot of
Sheri
self-development. Yes.
I've known Sheri the longest out of the group, mainly because we were just working on projects together. But I mean, I guess my concern, and wanting to be vulnerable and humble about it, but my concern is, okay, so when exactly do you be that vulnerable? Because I do have a different life than most, and in a different situation. And so it's like, when are you being extremely vulnerable? How much do you tell someone after you've gone out with them a couple times? And
kind of like when to share what?
Yeah, because I don't want to, one of my biggest fears is that no matter who it is or when it is, that, you know, they're going to be scared away anyways.
Yeah.
I have one thought on this, and this.
So, and I can tell you, I like I said, everybody here knows already. So I am a single father of 3 autistic children, and they're high functioning, though, and only 2 of them live with me. One hurts. It really hurts a lot, but my middle child, my youngest daughter, she doesn't live with me because I couldn't support her, and she needed to get more help than I could provide. And so, you know, that's tough. And so just, you know, most people don't know that life and know what that's like, or could even understand that.
One thing that comes to mind for me with that is, you see these programs, you know, like I see them on YouTube every now and then, because there are some people that I have listened to, they're pretty good, but you'll see these ads or videos from dating coaches that are telling you how to manipulate somebody, you know, either by withholding approval, or, you know,
Right.
how to sort of play somebody into liking you. and that might be the way to manipulate a one night stand if you're wanting that.
Sure.
But it's not the way to create connection. And the reason that that I'm about to say what I'm going to say is, you can even use the right things to manipulate people in a way that isn't right.
Right.
And
Of course.
I mean, honestly, I got to a point in my middle years where getting women to fall in love with me was pretty easy. And I offered them what they craved, and that was emotional connection.
Yep.
And so, you know, but you can use that sincerely, or you can use it manipulatively.
Yep.
And so I think you need to use it sincerely, and you need to always check your own motives on that. I also think that when it comes to things like disclosing to people about your autistic kids, I mean, I don't suppose you need to tell everybody. I favor sooner rather than later. I think if it's going to be an issue for somebody and they can't accept you with that in your life, you might as well know it. I think a lot of people want to sort of hide behind, oh, I need to keep certain things private.
Right.
In order to say, I want to get somebody to like me a lot and invest in me before I tell them the truth. And I think that's a bad idea.
Right.
You know, so
Well,
I
yeah.
favor sooner rather than later.
I
Yeah,
think
I'm
sooner
not
rather
I'm
than
not one
later.
to hide. It would, I guess my biggest concern would be, I would probably be on the side of I'm wondering if I'm sharing too soon is
And that
probably
can
for me.
happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
That would be the question. It's not hiding. I mean, and I've actually been through a lot of I've been through a lot of coaching. I do some coaching myself. And so it's like, that's not the challenge. It's just wondering, okay, this is a very different situation, and very emotional, with the kids. And so it's like, so it's not a problem of being vulnerable. It's not a problem
you
of,
mentioned a couple times that it's a very different situation. And
yeah,
I mean, of course it feels that way for you because it's unique to you. And it's not that it's something that everybody deals with, but that doesn't mean no one's ever dealt with having children with special needs.
oh no, I don't, it's not just that. I mean, there's not very many single fathers that have full custody, that have complete full custody of special needs children.
Right. Yeah, no, and it is unique. That doesn't mean it can't be accepted, though. I guess I want to encourage you to believe it can be accepted, by the right person. Yes. And if you worry about sharing it too soon, like you want them to kind of fall in love with you a little bit first, or at least get to know you as a person before you dump on them like, okay, well, this is what it would be like to be married to me. I mean, you could experiment with just pushing it out a date or two, not like huge, not like
right.
forever, but I mean, have you tried
that? Not to say it on the first phone call, but when it comes up about your family. Yeah.
Right.
Have you tried that?
So, no, I haven't. I'm not dating.
Online communication.
So yeah, I'm not dating. I'm actually, my divorce is actually final the end of January.
Okay.
Because I've been separated for almost 2 years.
So it's more like you're anticipating it next year. Okay.
Yeah. So it's more of, so what I've been doing is, like I said, I've done lots of self-development. So it's just, for me, is preparing. And it was just
too, right, Antonio? You have conversations with.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I talked to a lot of people, and I make friends, and so yes. But I'm not dating.
I think that's why I wait a few weeks.
So you just can know that you can play around with that. And I don't think that you owe anybody everything on the first date. I don't even think that is wise. I mean, Jeff talks about having done that, and he knows it was oversharing. And I think it could have waited a couple of dates or something. I mean, I don't think, especially if it's like, feels really vulnerable for you, you want to share it with people who you think you actually have potential with, not just like, someone you're just meeting and you might not ever see again.
Right. Okay.
Although
you
in the
mind if I
final
just
analysis, it probably didn't make much difference.
Yeah, that's true. Well, and that's not a fact about you that someone would reject, you know?
Jeanette was going to say something.
Yeah,
as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just thinking that I think there's a difference between introducing something like that as a specific comment in a conversation. There's a difference between that and something just coming up naturally in a conversation
What about yourself? Something about your idea.
about yourself. And if somebody says to me, well, tell me about your family, you know, there is nothing wrong with bringing that up then, because it doesn't mean you have to go into great detail, but there is nothing wrong, you know, in saying that I have a family and my children, they have special needs. And I mean, if somebody said that to me, because SEN is my thing, I've worked with children with special needs, straight away I'd think, oh, that sounds interesting. I'd like to know more.
Yeah.
And so it is about the right person and about the context. So we
I
don't
love
have
that
to force
perspective.
yeah, we don't have to force a conversation. If it just comes out naturally, the right people will be interested.
Yeah, and Antonio, I like the way she said it was, you just stated as a fact of your life and not as something you need to be ashamed or embarrassed about or feel like, oh, they're probably going to, X, Y, Z.
Right. Or even needing to be vulnerable. It's not necessarily vulnerable because it's not a part of your identity or part of your your story that you could be embarrassed about. But yeah, it's just a fact.
It's just something about your children.
Yeah.
That's all it is.
Yeah, well, I'm not embarrassed about it.
Oh, but I mean, it's not, so saying it at any time is,
I guess, letting people, like, giving the energy that I'm going to let you show up for me, how you're going to show up for me with this information.
Right.
Yeah, that's good. That's actually really good point. So one thing that we have brought up, and I'll say this is our last statement, one thing that we have brought up in every one of our calls.
Sheri?
Yeah.
Can I just say the one thing that I was trying to come up with earlier and I forgot?
Yeah, for sure.
It's about footholds. And I started off to say this at the beginning and couldn't remember it until now. But I gave this long litany of things we had dealt with in our 5.5 years of marriage, not even mentioning the 2.5 years before, or 2 years before that we dated. But I think both of us coming into our marriage had a certain amount of trauma from former failed relationships and maybe from childhood too. We both have certain challenges in terms of moods and things. And I think both of us probably came into it with some trust issues.
Yes.
And I don't think the strength of your love and your relationship, as well as just your confidence in your ability to be successfully married, is revealed when everything's hunky-dory. I think it's revealed when you have adversity, and we've had a hell of a lot of it. I mean, more than most people get in many decades.
So really, a really beautiful thing to maybe envision and attract into your life is someone who's willing to get in the mud with you, do the hard things with you that are part of your life, and someone then you're willing to get in the mud with them and do the hard things that are part of their life.
I think we have, in a way, kind of needed some of these unspeakable tragedies to get through them, sometimes well, sometimes shaky, but still get through them together. And I think we trust our marriage more as a result of having gone through a lot of crap than if everything had been hearts and flowers and honeymoon.
Can we just trust it enough now we don't
So-
anymore?
So I think, well, I hope so. But for me, that's our biggest foothold in a way, is that
Thank you.
we have been through a lot together in a relatively short time, and we've gotten through it, and we still love each other. We're still here for each other. And, we're not perfect. We don't have a perfect marriage, but we're both willing to try and do what it takes. And we've shown that to each other.
The last thing I wanted to just mention is that we do have a men's group and a women's group for our coaching practice, and it's awesome. It's a lot like this where, you show up, you love each other, like you're excited to get in and discuss things that like are helpful to your life. So if anyone's interested, the open enrollment will be in December for the new year.
Yeah.
I didn't want to run your program over, but
So you have the last
I thought I
word,
should
and
put that
let's
in.
end this thing.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you guys mentioned all of that. It's so good. And it's, I mean, I could have asked you, and I do. I would, if you didn't say it, I would have asked you to tell us all ways we can connect. And those are some good ways for sure. Through the Lily group, they have a lot of.
loveandlateryears.com is our website.
Yeah. Yes. Perfect.
Can I just say one little thing?
Yes, please. Yeah.
Your relationship is so evident by the way you look at each other.
Mhm.
That's what I've observed
True.
this evening,
Yes,
or this
it's
morning
true.
for you. This evening.
And how you talk with each other and stuff. Yes.
I just love the way you interact and the way you look at each other. It's just, you are a team. You
Yeah.
can see that you are a team.
Yes.
Thanks.
So good. It is awesome. Very good. So I want to say, and each of you can say anything, add to this if you want to, but what I wanted to say, just recapping the really super quick 1 minute, maybe. The things that we have all brought up in every one of our calls are something that we had in common, and every one of them was be yourself, no matter what anyone else says. Really, the most important is to be and love yourself. And you will attract the other person who is your match. And that's one thing that I have really valued in all of these conversations, but also, and it was very evident in the last book club that we did too, is that you're anchor in hope. You help us to anchor our hope to this one day, this intentional, this person that someday we will have, because of all of the distractions Jeff brought up, all the distractions and all the things that get in our way that keep us from that goal, but staying focused on our ideal relationship. Not necessarily ideal, just something that was a good match. But anyway, we've learned a lot from each other. It's been so fun to collaborate and connect with everybody, all the different backgrounds and insights that everybody has. It's been so enjoyable. And your book has brought us together, and you've taught us a lot about hope and turning to Christ and holding on to those hopes. So thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome. I love that. Thank you for sharing that.
Anybody have a favorite chapter?
Yeah. Does anyone want to say anything about the book that I hadn't mentioned? We all have, we probably weren't prepared to say. My favorite is the law of attraction, because that is what actually got me out of my mode of saying, I don't ever want to do this again. That was when you first get divorced, you just say, I'm not doing this again. Like some people have a better experience marriage than others. And I just thought, I'm happy and I'm doing great and I don't need this again. And so the law of attraction has been my favorite, because I focus on what do I want, not what I don't want, not what I don't want. So
Well, to go back to what Jeanette was saying about the little things we can see as red flags, if we can also look for green flags.
That's exactly what I do. And that's what helps me, is because there are going to be some things that you won't like about some people, that you date. But if ultimately your relationship is that ideal, or I say the attraction, or what you really want ultimately,
I would say there's red flags and green flags in every relationship.
Exactly.
And really the red flags are like what you find as red flags are those things I can deal with.
Right.
And the green flags are those the strengths I want in a companionship.
Yeah, we talked about that in the chapter on lists, is that there are going to be some things that we definitely want to strongly avoid.
That's my favorite chapter, and the one I work with clients on a lot, because if we're not intentional about what we want, then we waste a lot of time.
Yes. Yeah, it's true too. I like that one too. That's a really good one. Focusing on what it is that you want. And then it doesn't, then all the people that, well, there are not a lot of men who come to me or who reach out to me who would not be a good match, because I'm so open about who I am and about how I work well with others, other personalities or whatever. So
yeah, Sheri, actually you're really good at being who you are, and that is a really great quality. And I love that you said that that's what kind of a big takeaway that everyone's getting from the book is to be who you are, show up authentically, and then you're going to end up with someone who appreciates.
You're going to attract your match, not the one that you think you need to have, but the one that is best for you. Yeah. You end up like Cathy and Jeff, you end up loving the match that Heavenly Father put together, right?
Yeah, and it actually felt kind of, and I actually didn't get to say this earlier, but it felt like we were divinely matched, meaning like, because I had to listen to my heart and the spirit, and my brain wasn't fully functioning as a sick person, I felt like we got married, and then it was like, okay, here's your companion, get used to it. And it was really strange because like I'd chosen the 2 times before, but this time, like, I really wanted God to guide me and only really allow me to choose in or even say yes if it was going to be great. And it's been hard sometimes, but it has been great.
He threw us right into the deep end.
Yes. Well, he knows more. He knows more of who we are wanting to become also, and how our partner can help us to get there.
I remember saying that in the middle of a lot of that stuff.
Yeah.
I guess we're learning to trust each other. And, you know, maybe that's what we needed. Maybe we had to prove to ourselves that we wouldn't run at the first sign of trouble.
Yes. And we can turn to God and say, what can I learn from this person or the situation?
I may be divorced twice. That doesn't negate that I can be like a really committed and loyal person. I think we are that way.
The funny thing is, I mean, I was dating one person that hadn't been married, and she was dating 2 people like that. And instead we both chose the person who'd been divorced twice.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure you're all ready to move on with your day. This is fun. I
Yes,
actually have a
fun.
student recital in less than a couple hours, so I have to.
Thank you guys, every one of us, every one of you. Thank you for joining today. You guys all have a beautiful day.
Take care.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.